Good morning, friends. Welcome to the 13th weekly lecture of our program Samachar Manthan. And before I start my lecture, I have a request that a lot of people are not attempting the test. So I request them to attempt the test because this program is not just about enriching your current affairs skills, it's also about enriching your answer writing skills, because ultimately it will be not your knowledge but your answer writing skills which will help you clear this exam. And if you think that you will, after your prelims, you will start writing the answers and then you will be able to write the good answers, no, it's not like that. I have personally seen many people who used to write really bad answers during the first few weeks. Now their answers have been improving. So I request you to, most of you, to attempt as many tests as possible. So like the earlier lectures, we will start with the mains lectures, mains issues, then we will start with the prelims issues. So there are some 16-17 mains issues this week. Rakesh will take 4 or 5, rest of them I will take. Let's start with the first issue. So first issue is, should the states have legislative council? So this issue was in news because Orissa has proposed that it will also, or it wants to join the club of or group of states which have the upper house or the legislative council. That is why this debate has been raised, that should the states have legislative councils or not. So let us first discuss. So in this topic we will discuss pre-specific issues, which is how legislative council is formed, what are the powers they have, and then we will come to the mains part, which is in discussion on why it should be established and why it should not be established. So let's start with the first part, which is the process of setting a council. So it requires two things. Firstly, it requires that the state assembly should pass a resolution with a special majority, which is 2/3 majority, and then it goes to the parliament, and parliament has to pass that bill with simple majority. And the creation of legislative council does not come under the category of constitutional amendment under Article 368. So if states pass by simple majority and parliaments refuse to pass it by simple majority, legislative assembly will not be created. Parliament cannot alone, pass a bill for the creation of legislative council. The recommendation should come from the state legislature, and state legislature should pass that resolution by special majority. Now let us discuss about the powers of legislative council and how the members are elected in LC. So the members of legislative council are elected indirectly, like we elect the members of Rajya Sabha, but the process is different. So around one third of the member are elected by the MLAs themselves. One third of them are elected by the members of urban and rural, the local bodies. I think it's 1/6. You can check it inside. 1/6 are 1/6 of them are elected by graduates, and teachers, and 1/12 of them are nominated by the governor. And these are people who have some special capability in the fields of art, science, and literature. So, as of now, there are 7 states which have the LC or the Legislative Council, and these states are Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, J&K, Karnataka, Maharashtra, UP, and Telangana. And each member of Legislative Council have a term of 6 years, and the age is 30 years. Also, it is by rule it is established that the size of Vidhan Sabha cannot be more, or the size of Vidhan Parishad or Legislative Council cannot be more than 1/3 of that of State Assembly. So it has to be 1/3 or less than 1/3. There is, and the minimum size should not be less than 40. So Vidhan Parishad should have at least 40 members. There is one exception here. J&K, because of its special status, J&K has 36 members. So it has been given the exemption. Now let's look at the powers of the Legislative Council. So in comparison to the Rajya Sabha, the position of LC is very weak. So LC have no power in the money bill like the Rajya Sabha, but in Rajya Sabha is equal power in ordinary bills. But in case of Legislative Council, it can hold the ordinary bill for only 4 months maximum. So in the first instance, if a bill has been passed from Legislative Assembly, it goes to the Council. If Legislative Council does not take any action for 3 months, the bill will be deemed to be passed. If the bill, and so it has to take action within 3 months. Now the bill, if it sends back the bill to the Legislative Assembly with some amendments, and Legislative Assembly refuses to accept those amendments, then the bill will again go to the Legislative Council. That is called a second instance, and in second instance the bill can only be held for 1 month by the Legislative Council. So after 4 months, the bill will be deemed to be passed by both the houses of the state legislature, even if the Legislative Council does not agree with the bill. So all it can do is that it can delay the bill for 4 months. Also, there is no provision of joint sitting in the case of state legislature. So like in Rajya Sabha or like in the parliament, if there is dispute, there is a provision of joint sitting. But in case of state legislature, the Legislative Assembly has been given a supreme power. Now let's look into the advantages of having Legislative Council. So first advantage of Legislative Council is that, in India we have what you call as competitive politics, and in competitive politics, the intellectual class, the people with special talent, they are, they don't fight the elections, because as you know that elections is expensive, plus not all people have the talent to have oratory skills to convince the people. So these people do not get represented in the legislators or in the democratic process of India. So what this Legislative Council does is that it provides an opportunity to these experts, to these intellectuals, to these scientists, to these economists, to be able to enter the legislative process in India, right? So and that it strengthens the what you call as intellectual environment in the legislative or in the state legislatures. mean, there are certain examples of that. In some states which have legislative council, they have selected outside people who are economists, who are, let's take an example of Dr. Manmohan Singh. Manmohan Singh would have never entered the politics if there would have been no Rajya Sabha, because he would have not contested elections in 1991, and it was because of Rajya Sabha that his services were taken by the government, and we got this economic reform. So that is also, this provision will also help the state governments to do those things. So if it wants somebody from the state who is in world renowned economist or scientist, and if it wants to avail the services of that person, it cannot do, because there is no legislative council in some states. So he can only be made some member of some commission. But if a chief minister wants that, I want this person to be in my cabinet, that cannot happen, because you have to be a member of at least one house if you want to be a minister. You can only remain a minister for 6 months. After 6 months, you will be, or your ministership would be debated. Let's look at the second advantage of this. So it gives what you call it cools down the rush of the hour feeling in the popularly elected house, and paves way for more rational thoughts. So as you know that, in the lower house we don't have expertise. The kind of MLAs we have in states, they are horrible. I mean, most of them are not even 12th pass, and there are a number of expert issues on which a bill is passed from them. I mean, they are supposed to make laws for us. So what they do is that they don't take, or they don't think about the long term impacts of passing that bill, because they are not that much talented, they are not that much educated. So when you have upper house, what upper house does is that it gives them solutions. It gives them some suggestions, right? That, see, this bill has certain flaws, and that can be, and that should be rectified, because it is expected that people in the upper house will be more mature. They will give more saner, more sober advice to the lower house. So it allows that the bill, or it ensures that the bill which is finally passed by the state legislature, it is passed after a thorough consideration, it is passed after a thorough discussion, it is passed after a proper intellectual inputs. So that improves the quality of the law. Problem in India is that the quality of the law is disputed. There are so many loopholes, there are so many vagueness in the law, which makes it prone to misuse. Also, some people say that it blocks the, it slows down the decision making, or it leads to policy paralysis. But this case is not valid, because unlike Rajya Sabha, legislative council cannot, for time being, cannot stuck the bill. उसको बिल पास करना पड़ेगा. It has to pass the bill within, or if it doesn't pass the bill will be automatically passed within 4 months. So this policy paralysis argument is not valid. Ultimately, the legislative council can only hold the bill for 4 months. So 4 months is not a big time. And the government can always bring ordinances if there's something very urgent. So this claim that it leads to policy paralysis, or it slows the decision making process, this is not valid. Now let's discuss the arguments against having council. So first argument is that in practicality, yes, in theory, it provides opportunity for intellectuals and the more rational people, but in theory, just like Rajya Sabha, it has become a playground for those who have been defeated in the electoral politics. So those who get defeated in the state elections, to accommodate them, because most of them are very, like, some of these members are close to the government or close to the chief minister. The chief minister wants them in the cabinet, so they send them to the legislative council in order to make them the minister. And in second case, even if the chief minister does not make them the minister, to keep them happy, to keep them cool, they try to send them to the legislative council. Second argument is that it is an unnecessary drain on the exchequer. I mean, when it does not have any power, right, either on ordinary bill and money, but why we pay, why we create them, pay the salaries, maintain the kind of functions, pay the officials, etc. Third argument is that in the political parties today's, the legislator draws the talent from the grassroots and the other people. So in all political parties, you have lawyers, you have academic people, you have scientists, and most of them are they are appointed as the members of some commission or something. So government have been able to take the advice of those people, and also there have been a lot of scientists and intellectuals who have been getting elected. So it could be a good argument 30 years back that we need a LC to accommodate that. At present, then you have example of people like Shashi Tharoor, who were the proper what you call is professional, and they entered the parliament not through the nominated route but through facing elections. So this argument that you need a special house to accommodate these intellectuals is not valid, because many of them have been elected in the through direct elections, and many of them have been members of the commission, and the government have been using the services of those intellectuals. Also, it has been said that if legislative council would have been such a great kind of benefit for the state legislature, why only 7 states have that? Why didn't other states also went for that? I mean, if it would have seriously increased the quality of lawmaking, the other states would have aped that. But since they did not do that, it means that we cannot guarantee that after LC has been created, the lawmaking process, the efficiency and the quality of lawmaking process would improve. So what is the way forward? So the way forward is that there should be a national policy on having upper houses in state legislature. And there is a need for a wide range of debate and intellectual opinion to have upper houses in all on all states. I mean, either it should be there in all states or it should not be there in any states. So there should be proper discussion on pros and cons and need of the legislative council, and also legislative council, if legislative council should be created, it should be given some power. Otherwise, you are creating an institution and you are making them, or you are making it toothless, then it's a drain on exchequer. So when legislative council should, if there is a national consensus made through discussion that we should have legislative council, then they should be endowed with some powers. It should not be equal powers like state legislature, but there should be some power. And also there should be provision made that in the upper house only the intellectuals and the kind of professionals, only they would be appointed in that, or they would be elected to that. And there should be law which should be made that the defeated politicians should not be allowed to enter the legislative council. Only in that case legislative council will be able to fulfill the purpose the purpose for which it is intended. So this ends the first issue of the week, which is, should the states have legislative council? Let's move to the second issue, which is Mental Health Care Act. So this Mental Health Care Act was in news recently because there was an op-ed, and also it recently came into force, though it was passed last year, but it came into force just a month back. So why do we need, first let's just discuss why do we need such an act. So by the way, this act makes it makes a justifiable right for any citizen of the country to get access to the mental health care. So now, if the state has to provide mental health care services to all the citizens of this country. They can go to the court if that services is not provided to them. So why do we need such an act? Because we have 150 million people with mental health care disease or which need treatment. See, the problem in India is that the term mental health only means that if you are a lunatic, in that case you would be considered as mentally sick. But it's not like that. Most of the people, or a large amount of people, at least in urban areas, have this problem of depression. And depression is also one kind of mental health. Or it is one kind of mental sickness. Recently my neighbor, he tried to commit suicide, and he was not really, something was not wrong on him. He just did that because he had a problem of depression. He had a good job, he had a good life, but he did it because he had a problem of depression. So problem is that the stigma is there, that mental health means that if you are a lunatic, if you will be considered as mentally sick, it would mean that you are a complete lunatic. It does not like that. It is not like that. Even if you have a problem of depression, you would be considered as a mental patient. Secondly, 92% of the people who have some kind of mental illness, they don't get any kind of treatment, or they don't have access to any form of mental health care. And this again is because of the stigma which I was talking about. Nobody wants to accept that I am mentally sick. Nobody wants to visit the doctor. Thirdly, according to the National Mental Health Survey 2016, India spends less than 1% of the health budget on mental health. So of the total expenditure which India does on healthcare, less than 1% is spent on the mental health. Also, Stigmatization and the discrimination is also a cause of concern. As you know that the mental patients face a lot of discrimination and there is a lot of stigma attached with them. Also, we have numerous instances of human rights violation as a result of poor quality of mental health care. So we have examples of forced admission in the mental hospitals. We have example of giving this what you call as EC to the minors. There has been incidences of keeping the mental health patients in chains. So this requires that we should have a proper dedicated law for mental health care, which kind of supports and which protects the rights of the mental health patient. Also, India ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Peoples with Disability, and because India has ratified that convention, that mandates that the state should have a dedicated law addressing mental health care. And lastly, we don't have a strong law on this subject till now. Let's now look into the important features of this bill of this act. Firstly, it provides right of person with mental illness. So a person with mental illness has a justifiable right to get access to the mental health services, and right to access of mental health care includes availability, accessibility and affordability. Second is the provision of advance directive. This means that a mentally ill person has been given freedom to decide or he has the right to choose the way of treatment which he wants to have, and also he can nominate a person who can take the decision on his behalf. Thirdly, it establishes central and state mental health authority. And this authority will have power it is kind of a regulator, so it has a power to maintain registers of all mental health institutes in India. It has to develop the quality services in these institutions. It can receive complaints, it can train the law enforcement officials, and it can advise the government on the matters relating to the mental health. Then you have Mental Health Review Commission and Board. This is actually, it is kind of a quasi judicial body. So if some act of this, or if some provision of this act is not being functioned or not being enforced, then somebody can complain in this body. So if a mental health patient has been denied the access to the health care, he can complain to this board that, see, my access to the health care has been denied. Then this board can penalize the government officials for that. Also, it advises the government on protection of the rights of mentally ill person. Fourth thing it does is that it decriminalizes suicide. So suicide, as you know, was a punishable event in India, and as you know that people who try to commit suicide, their mental health is not perfect. I mean, you and me will think probably 10,000 times before taking this step, because our mental health is normal. So you are penalizing somebody who is mentally sick. This is really what you call is absurd. So that is why this act has done a really good job, that it has decriminalized suicide. Also, it has prohibited electroconvulsive therapy in minors. This is that therapy where you push this and then you get this electric shocks and all these things. That was considered very inhumane. So now the bill says that the minors, in the case of minors, this ECT therapy, it will not be used. Also, there is insurance. It has a provision of insurance. So now the insurance company cannot deny somebody insurance because he is mentally sick. So what are the drawbacks of the bill? Significance, so we have already discussed in this part. All these are significance. Now let's look at the drawbacks. So the first drawback of this bill is that it recognizes mental illness as a clinical issue. Which needs to be treated. So there is no provision in the bill which talks about preventing and promoting mental health. I mean, why do you want to reach to the state of why do you want to reach to a state where you are mentally sick and then you start treating that person? The job of the healthcare should be to prevent people from becoming mentally sick, and for that you need to create awareness among the society. You need to treat them, or you need to promote mental health in the society. You can give focus on meditation, all these things, try to strengthen mental health of a person. So you should focus on that first. This should be considered as a last resort. The job of the government should be on prevention and promotion rather than only on curing. Also, there has been no clear procedure with respect to advance directive. So it has a provision of advance directive that the person who is mentally sick, he has a right to decide his own course of treatment. But if he is mentally sick, will he be rational to do that? Will he take a rational decision to do that? All these points, the bill is silent on that. What will happen if somebody is a complete lunatic? He will say, no, I don't want any kind of treatment. What will you do? So all these loopholes, it has not been clearly given in the bill what to do in that case. Also, there has been this stigma here that once a person is admitted to the mental hospital, he is termed as a mad or insane by the society. So there has been no provision in the act to educate the society against these misconceptions. I mean, the stigma which was already prevalent in the society, these stigmas will continue to remain in this bill because there is no provision in educating the people. Also, the act fails to provide for the full list of treatment options available. So, I mean, it does not provide, in the bill does not provide that these are the treatment, these are the options you have when you are mentally sick. So, to make an informed choice, you need these information. Otherwise, there will be problem of asymmetry of information. Also, the act provides for, this act has a provision for simpler discharge process, that if you want to discharge somebody from mental health hospital, the process has been made simpler. But it does not talk about what will the government do after his discharge. I mean, you need to rehabilitate him, you need to reintegrate that person into the society, because as you know that there is already stigma associated with that guy. So there will be no company which will hire him, because they will think that he turned mad few years back. Now, we can't take him. So the government should take care of its rehabilitation and his reintegration into the society. Also, the bill is silent on extra funding which the central government should provide to the state government, because to implement this bill you need a lot of finances, and as you know that healthcare is hardly a priority for most of the state government, at least in North India. So if this bill will invoke some extra burden on them, they would probably not be able to implement this bill. So you need to provide extra provisions or extra fund for implementing this bill. Also, there has been most of the stress is laid on hospital admission and treatment. So this again increases the cost of healthcare, and there has been no provision made under the bill for home care. This is more of what you call as hospital-centric treatment which this bill provides. Now let's look at the steps which the government can take for its proper implementation. So the first step that the government can take is that it will have to make appropriate budgetary provisions to plug the existing infrastructure gap. This is this which I have said in the last point, in the last part, that the kind of infrastructure we have with respect to mental health care, it's dismal. You don't have hospitals, you don't have mental health care professionals, so you need to create that. So the center and the state should have extra fund for that purpose. Also, along with this, because the state, only the state cannot do that, you need to involve the community groups in this regard. So there has been example of what you call as Atmiyata project. So this Atmiyata project is being implemented in the Mehsana district in Gujarat. Under this, some volunteers are trained with respect to mental health, that how to identify that somebody is mentally sick or not, how to give him initial counseling, etc. So all the volunteers have been provided with the smartphones, and through smartphones the experts communicate with these volunteers. They provide them with information, etc. And then these volunteers work at the grassroots level. They identify people who are mentally sick, and then they give them proper initial counseling, what you should do. So this kind of community support is required, because the government cannot do everything. You need to involve the community. Thirdly, the state government will have to immediately set up and ensure the functioning of state mental health authorities and mental health review board. And lastly, the government should, or implementation of this act is not possible without coordinated efforts on the part of all stakeholders with an interest in mental health care, which means you need coordination among central government, state government, the civil society, the law enforcement agency, and the judiciary. All need to work together as a team. Only then we will have the impact of this, or only then this act can make the impact at the grassroots level. This ends the second issue of this week. Let's move to the third issue, which is section 124A. So section 124A, this talks about what? This talks about sedition. And why this was in news? Because recently the Law Commission has revisited the section, and it has raised a question that how far is it justified for India to retain an offence introduced by the British to suppress the freedom struggle when Britain itself abolished the law 10 years ago. So this section 124A was introduced in late 19th century when the nationalism started to grow in India. So when nationalism started to grow in India, the British government thought that we need a strong law to curb the activities of these nationalists, and to curb that activities this section was brought. And under this section, Bal Gangadhar Tilak was booked and he was jailed for 6 years. Under this section, Mahatma Gandhi was booked and jailed for 6 years. Under this section, a lot of leaders of Indian National Congress were booked and sent to jail. So this law says that whoever by words either spoken or written, or by signs or by visible representation, or otherwise brings or attempts to bring into hatred or contempt against the government established by law, and whoever by the above means excites or attempt to excite dissatisfaction towards the government established by law has committed the offense of sedition. So this is a very, very vague law, because if you criticize the government, it can be termed as that you are creating dissatisfaction against the government. So what are let us first look at the arguments in favor of this law, because if a question comes in UPSC, you cannot just outrightly say that this law is bad. You can take your stand in the conclusion part, but you should discuss in the main body part. You have to discuss both sides of the issue. So first argument in favor is that the Kedarnath Singh versus the state of Bihar judgment in 1962, the Supreme Court has clearly defined that this law can only be invoked, or somebody could only be charged under sedition law if he excites, or if if he gives a speech which talks about overthrow of the state through violent means. So if I am saying that Modi government has failed on all grounds, it's the most unpatriotic, it's the most dictatorial government since independence, I cannot be booked under sedition. If I say that this government has failed to do its job, now the army people, the common people, the police, they should stop accepting the orders of this government, and they should rise up and they should overthrow this government through an armed struggle or through a revolution. In that case, I will be booked under sedition. The Supreme Court has clearly given its verdict in the Kedarnath case. So there is no case of vagueness which was present in the original law. Also, Article 19 says that we have freedom of expression and liberty, but reasonable restrictions could be imposed on that. And a country which has internal threat from Naxalism, from Islamic terrorism, from what you call as Hindutva terrorism, from China, and then we have external threats from China and Pakistan, you require a law which acts as a deterrent for the people. Because this acts as a deterrent that we cannot talk of that, because you need this law to maintain law and order. This is what the law enforcement agency says, that you need a law, this kind of law in a country like India, which is multicultural, which has number of internal security problems. You need a law like this to act as a deterrent. Now, what are the arguments against section 124? First argument is that it stifles the democratic right of the people to criticize the government. So yes, the Kedarnath case has said that you need to talk only of violent overthrow, only then it could be revoked. But the local police does not know about that. They think that if you have criticized the government, and if the government orders them that this guy should be booked under this sedition, they kind of invokes it. So this acts as a kind of it gives a chilling effect to free speech. Because using this section 124, a lot of opposition leaders, a lot of press people, a lot of activists have been arrested. Right? I mean, because ultimately it is the law enforcement agency who has to implement. Later on, the judiciary will decide, or judiciary will say that he is not guilty. But that will take time. You can take the case of Kanhaiya Kumar. He was booked, he was in jail for 2 weeks. And later court said that we don't have any proof. But for 2 weeks he was in jail. And a person like us, it will give a chilling effect that okay, we will be, in court we will be considered as not guilty, but at least for 2 weeks we will be in jail. We will be in mercy of these police people. They can do anything with us. So that is enough to have a chilling effect on you. Also, the law is draconian. Because it has a provision that it is non-bailable, it is non-cognizable, and the punishment can extend up to life. Non-bailable, that you cannot be bailed. Non-cognizable means that the police can arrest the person without taking permission from the court. That is the meaning of non-cognizable. cognizable, and you can be jailed for life. So this is too much of what you call as draconianship. Also, we already have the other legislations to deal with unlawful activities and armed movement. So we have the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, which has been strengthened by the UPA government. That act is enough to deal with them. Why do we need a separate law to deal? Because as the law clearly says that you need to talk of violent overthrow, and when you talk of violent overthrow, the UAPA, this is also invoked on you. So when UAPA can be invoked on you, why don't you require a separate law for that? And also, Britain, from which this law has came, Britain has also dissolved this law. And there's hardly any democratic country which has this kind of law. Now, what is the way forward? So, if a question comes in UPSC, would you outrightly say that we should abolish? You can take that stand, but you need to justify that stand with very, very strong points. My suggestion is that you should take a middle ground, balanced ground, like you take in all the answers. Ultimately, you have to clear the exam, and to clear, my purpose in these lectures and in this program is to help you clear the exam. My job is not as an academic to give you kind of intellectual knowledge, which you get as a byproduct, but my main focus is to help you clear the exam. So that is why the way forward should also be, my session that should be balanced. So what we can do is that first we can say that law should not be abolished. The time is not come that law should be abolished, but we can make certain amendments in the law to ensure that the law is not misused. So what amendments are needed? Firstly, all speech related offences should be made a bailable offence. Secondly, it should be made cognizable offence, which means that before arresting somebody, you have to take the orders of the court. Also, like section 153A and section 295A, it should be made mandatory that you need to have a prior sanction of the government before taking cognizance of the offence. Also, the officer of at least SP rank, he should give orders to invoke this law. Because the problem is that at SHO level, people are not aware of the law. And that is why any speech criticizing the government, they think that they have committed the act of sedition. At SP level, people are at least IPS, so they have a better understanding of the things. So SP rank officer should give permission. And also, in case of hate speech, the burden of proof should lie on those people who claim that their sentiments are hurt. This ends the third issue of the week. Let's move to the fourth issue, which is ways to read the Constitution of India. So this is an op-ed. So Constitution, as you know, recently there have been Sabrimala case, which you must have read on the newspaper, and Sabrimala case talks about it raises 3-4 important issues. These important issues are related to religious freedom, gender equality, and right of women to the worship. And Sabrimala case could be an important topic for your mains paper 2, mains paper 1, also an essay and interview. So this is a very, very important topic. So Sabrimala case is related to what? So in Sabrimala temple, there is an age-old tradition which says that Lord Ayappa, or it says that a woman who is in the menstruating age, so between 11 to 45 years, who are in menstruating age, they are not allowed to enter they are not allowed to reach to the main deity site. And the main deity there is Lord Ayappa. And they believe that Lord Ayappan would get angry if a menstruating woman enters the main deity. Now, a petition have been filed in the Supreme Court and in that petition it says that it violates the Article 17, which is the Untouchability Act. The counter petition have been filed by the temple members or the officers of the temples, which says that we are doing this practice under the Article 25 and Article 26. So this case, what Supreme Court is hearing is, and or Supreme Court has to decide that which article will be invoked in this case. Article 17 versus Article 25 and 26. Article 25 and 26 says that Article 25 says that, or the temple members say that it forms a part of essential religious practice. This is an essential religious practice for them. And there is a provision, or there is a Supreme Court judgment that under Article 25, if the court decides that this practice is essential to that religion, then he is allowed to do that practice. For example, in the triple talaq case, the Supreme Court said that triple talaq is integral under article, or it is not integral, or it is not an essential practice of the Islam. Therefore, we are declaring it invalid and unconstitutional. Because in that case also, the triple talaq lobby, they gave this argument that it forms an essential practice under Article 25. The same argument is being given by the Sabrimala temple officers, that this case is under Article 25 and this is a part of essential religious practice. They also say that it is also freedom given under Article 26, and which says that the matters such as who can or who cannot enter the temple are covered under the right to administer and manage religious institutions. So Article 26 gives the right to the people to administer and manage their religious institutions. Temple authorities are saying that Article 26 provides us the power to decide who can and who cannot enter the temple. Now the other article is Article 17. The people who are saying that women should be allowed, they are invoking this Article 17. They are saying that in this case the notion is of purity and impurity, and the women, the menstruating women, are not allowed inside the temple because they are considered impure. Same is the case why Dalits were discriminated in India, because they were also considered as impure. So therefore they say that this is a clear-cut case of purity versus impurity. Therefore this practice violates Article 70. It is kind of promoting untouchability in India, right? So therefore they say that this the court should take it, which is in that. But the temple people are saying that Article 17 clearly says about Dalits. It talks about social classes. It does not talk about women. Therefore, the intent of the constitution makers should be kept into mind, and they did not intended to include women in the category of untouchability, because this talks only of social classes, right? So this article says that if the Supreme Court would decide in favor of the temple people, then it will go, or it will implement this thing, and this thing comes from the intent of the constitution maker. And there is another doctrine which is called as living tree approach. Those who are in law, they would be aware of that. Living tree approach says that constitution of a country, and this comes from the Canadian Constitution, and this approach says that constitution has been formed many years ago. At that time, probably that problem would not be there. The society was the society had different problems. The mindset of the people were not that much developed. Therefore, we should not look at the intent of the constitution makers when deciding any law, or when deciding the constitutionality of any law, but we should focus on the spirit. The spirit was like that the constitution makers in India wanted a liberal, wanted to create a just and an equal society. And therefore, this practice violates that spirit of the constitution. And since it violates the spirit of the constitution, it should, or any law should be declared as an unconstitutional law. Right? So, if the Supreme Court decides in favor of the petitioners, or if it invokes Article 17 in this case, it would be following the living tree approach. So therefore, the op-ed says that this case is not just important and it's a case of gender rights and all. It is important because it will pay if the Supreme Court decides in favor of the lady petitioners. It would be a landmark judgment, because it would mean that the Supreme Court has accepted the living tree approach, and then in future cases also we could expect some progressive decisions by the Supreme Court. And it would provide the opportunity for alternative reading of the Constitution. Let's move to the fifth issue, which is India needs to walk the talk on the BIMSTEC. It is also an op-ed. So why this was in news? Because recently we had a summit in Kathmandu of the BIMSTEC. So what is BIMSTEC? BIMSTEC is a regional organization and it has 7 countries: Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Thailand. So these are the countries which are around the Bay of Bengal. So the Bay of Bengal, the littoral countries, have found this organization of BIMSTEC, and the main purpose of BIMSTEC is to increase connectivity and trade among each other. So this organization contains members from SAARC countries and the ASEAN countries. It was established in 1997, and the BIMSTEC is home to 1.5 billion people, which constitute around 22% of world's population, has a GDP of 2.7 trillion economy, and the BIMSTEC members, most of them are growing at a decent rate of economic growth from last 5-6 years. So why is BIMSTEC important for India? First reason is it can be a counter to SARC. So the problem with SARC is that SARC has Pakistan in it, and Pakistan tries to, if there is any provision on which consensus is made, Pakistan plays the role of spoiler, and because anything can be accepted only with consensus, so most of the provisions or most of the kind of agreements which SARC countries agree on, they are not implemented on ground. And that has been done everywhere, right? In BIMSTEC, there is no country, there is no China, there is no Pakistan. All the countries that are members of BIMSTEC, we enjoy a good relationship with them. Therefore, we can pass on regional connectivity agreements, we can pass regional agreements through BIMSTEC. So BIMSTEC can act as a counter, because SARC has completely failed in last 3 decades to act as an organization for regional cooperation. We can think of regional cooperation through BIMSTEC, because almost all the countries except Maldives, which are part of SARC, are also part of BIMSTEC. Plus we have some countries from ASEAN also. So therefore, BIMSTEC can act as a counter to SARC to move forward with regional agreements, and it can also pressurize Pakistan. Pakistan would feel that these countries are using BIMSTEC for regional cooperation, then Pakistan will be forced to mend its ways. Second reason why it is important is that for India, making BIMSTEC work is important. Because we have given the excuse that Pakistan is there in SARC, that is why SARC is not moving forward. But in BIMSTEC, we can't give this excuse. If we will not move forward in BIMSTEC, if we will not achieve something substantial in BIMSTEC, then the countries will say that you are not serious on improving regional connectivity. You are not serious on improving regional cooperation. So in order to become a global power, you need to first become a regional power. And for that, you need to have an organization which actually works on ground. Third is natural resources. So the countries in the BIMSTEC, they have huge potential of hydro energy. You have fast flowing rivers in Bhutan, in Bangladesh. Then you have hydrocarbon in the Bay of Bengal, in Myanmar, in Thailand, and that can, if there is cooperation among BIMSTEC country, that can give India access to cheap hydrocarbons and also the hydropower energy. Also, it is very important for northeast connectivity, for northeast development. So let's explain this through a map. So we are having 2-3 projects with the BIMSTEC countries on northeastern connectivity. The most important being Kaladan multimodal project. Then we have India, Myanmar, Thailand trilateral highway. If these projects will be implemented on ground, that can significantly bring economic development in Northeast, that can connect the Northeast with the Southeast Asian countries. So we have, this is Kolkata. So see, this is Kolkata, this is Bangladesh. This is Situate. And this is Mizoram. So right now, if any good has to be exported to the Mizoram, it has to go through this chicken neck. And this chicken neck is a small kind of passage from where the good flows. And if China captures chicken neck, northeast, the connectivity of northeast with India will be lost. Plus, it takes around 1800 kilometers journey for any good to reach Mizoram through the land route or through the chicken net. And that can be improved if we complete the Kaladan multimodal project. So if Kaladan multimodal project will be completed, then to reach Mizoram, you will first through ship, you will reach to Situate. And then from Situate through the Kaladan river, you will reach till the India-Myanmar border. And from that, through highway, you will reach to Mizoram. So the total journey of this project will be, or the total journey would be around 800 kilometers, which is 1000 kilometers less than the journey which now we have to face. We have to go through this chicken neck. So that would be that will bring significant economic development to the Mizoram, because the Mizoram will get access to all the goods from mainland India very easily and very smoothly. So that is one of the reasons, and so for that we need BIMSTEC, because all these countries are member of BIMSTEC. Same goes with the India-Myanmar trilateral highway, India-Myanmar-Thailand highway. If the highway would be connected, then you know the northeast countries, or sorry, the northeast states, they can sell their goods in the Southeast Asian countries. Also, the goods from Southeast Asian countries can reach to the northeast region very smoothly. Also, it can act as a bridge between South Asian and Southeast Asian countries. So India in last few years have shown importance to BIMSTEC, which can be seen from the fact that after BRICS summit in Goa in 2016, India also, after few days, we also kind of conducted BIMSTEC summit in Goa. So that shows the importance of India, that we want to, because you know that the SAARC summit in Islamabad, that was postponed, and therefore India said that now it wants to use BIMSTEC as a substitute of the SAARC. It has said a lot of things, but on ground it is not doing anything, and this could be seen from the fact that India has still not placed its director to the BIMSTEC secretariat in Dhaka. So 2 years ago, the BIMSTEC secretariat have been established in Dhaka, but India has still not appointed its director to that secretariat. Also, Ministry of External Affairs have estimated that the budget for BIMSTEC would be just 12 lakhs, which is a paltry amount. So therefore, the intentions which India is showing, they are not reflecting on the ground. So therefore, how can we improve the open ask, how can we improve the efficiency of BIMSTEC? Firstly, we have to empower the BIMSTEC Secretariat. So right now, the BIMSTEC Secretariat have the budget of $0.2 million. It has a total staff of less than 10 people. So on ground, the BIMSTEC Secretariat is completely dysfunctional. So the member countries of the BIMSTEC should delegate autonomy to the Secretariat to hire experts, to hire technical experts, to set a multilateral agenda, and to serve as a driving force between the summits and the ministerial meetings. So we need to first give some funds to the BIMSTEC Secretariat. We need to give some autonomy to this Secretariat, and India has to play a big role in that. We have to be the leader of if we want to become the leader, we have to contribute with the funds. Like China is the leader in the BRICS countries, and it supports that through the funds it gives. Second thing is that India should take the role of informal leader of the BIMSTEC. So we need to, as we have discussed, that in SARC it failed to do anything. It gives us immense responsibility on India to not repeat the failures of SARC in BIMSTEC. For that, it needs to take the role of the leadership. It needs to take a proactive role in ensuring that the Secretariat of BIMSTEC is empowered. It needs to take the role that proper agreements are being, or something conclusive is achieved in all the summits. The summit should not become the Photoshop and talk opportunity where the leaders of this country comes, talk of big things and then go away. We need to ensure that the talks which are done in these summits, they're actually implemented on ground. We also need to focus on regional connectivity. We need to finish these Kaladan project and these other projects in order to show the seriousness that we give to the BIMSTEC. We also need to ensure that in all these summits, in all these ministerial meets, the highest officials in India should be represented. And thirdly, the BIMSTEC need to prioritize economic connectivity. And for that, we need to ensure that at least there should be a free trade agreement which should be signed among the BIMSTEC country. We should focus on improving road connectivity among the countries. All these things we need to ensure that there is free flow of goods and people among the countries. So all these things need to be done and to ensure that BIMSTEC can become an instrument for India's Act East and India's Neighborhood First policy. Let's move to the next issue, which is also an op-ed that it came in the Wire. It says, is it really time for India to shift away from fiscal deficit debate? So this was in news, this fiscal debate thing was in news because recently the vice chairman of Niti Aayog, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, and I had an opportunity to be taught by him. He was my professor for 1 year. He recently said that India should not be concerned about fiscal deficit. That is something which is not a threat to India, and we should not talk of fiscal deficit. A threat to India is trade deficit. So he said that the focus of the government should be on reducing the trade deficit, and that trade deficit could only be reduced if we improve our exports. And for that, the Niti Aayog Vice Chairman has recommended that we should focus, or we should not tighten the monetary and fiscal policy. Tightening the monetary fiscal policy means that when you follow what you call as not liberal, but when you follow what you call as contractive monetary policy, when you try to reduce the money supply in the economy, which the RBI has been doing, because RBI has raised the interest rate many times in last few months, which gives the signal that it wants less liquidity in the economy. And tight fiscal policy is reducing expenditure and increasing taxes. Both of these are done to reduce the demand in the economy. So the Niti Aayog Vice Chairman has said that we should not follow contractive monetary policy, and the government should not follow on reducing, government should not focus on reducing expenditure, because it says that fiscal deficit is not a concern for India. The concern is the increase in trade deficit. So the op-ed raises the question that is it time for India to shift from the fiscal deficit debate, which means is it time for India to ignore the fiscal deficit problem and to focus only on the current account deficit problem. So what has been the linkages between increasing trade deficit and falling rupee? So in theory, when the rupee falls, it makes our exports cheaper to the rest of the world, which would give boost to exports, which will in time which will reduce the current account deficit for India. But in India's case, this is not happening, because I have discussed that in the earlier lecture. That India's imports are something which are what we call as, which are mandatory, which are inelastic. We cannot reduce the import of oil, we cannot reduce the import of other things which we do. So therefore, because of fall in rupees, the imports are becoming expensive for India. And because of that, trade deficit in India has been decreasing, or trade deficit of India has been increasing. So, and with festive season around the corner, it would increase further, because the import of gold will increase, and it is expected that current account deficit would reach 2.8% by the end of this year from 1.9 kind of percent. So what has IMF suggested to the RBI? So IMF has said, so see, how can you stop the free fall of rupees? There is only one simple solution. We have $450 billion of forex reserve, and if RBI uses that reserve, if suppose $50 billion is introduced in India's economy, then the rupee would strengthen, and rupee would reach to the level of 62 rupees. So what it needs is just introducing $50 billion into the Indian economy. IMF has suggested to RBI that you can use that. You can use that method. You can introduce your forex reserve into the to the economy in order to stop the free fall of rupees, because it says that if the free fall of rupee, is saying that if free fall of rupee is not stopped, the current account deficit in India would increase further and it could lead to balance of payment crisis in the future. Therefore, IMF has suggested that India, the RBI should intervene in managing rupees. Now, the question which this op-ed asks is that should we only focus on current account deficit? Is it the right time to move away from the fiscal deficit debate? So, the op-ed says that the fiscal deficit in India is not really at a good number. We have the fiscal deficit in India is 3.5%, and if we include the deficit of the states, the fiscal deficit in India increases to 7% of GDP. And the op-ed says that ignoring fiscal deficit is not a good decision because of number of factors. So, what are these factors? Let us discuss. First is that it creates, if fiscal deficit increases it increases inflation. How that will do? So if fiscal deficit increases, how do government or why do fiscal deficit increase? When government expenditure increases, and when the government expenditure or when the government reduces taxes. In both cases, when the government expenditure increases and when the government reduces taxes, demand in the economy would increase. Because when government will increase its expenditure, their expenditure would be transferred for making roads, making parks, that will give rise to employment. And when the new people will get employment, their demand would increase. Same will go with taxes. If taxes will be reduced, the real income of people would increase, and then they would demand more goods. And because of structural bottlenecks, the supply cannot be increased in short run. So when there will be excess demand and less supply, it will lead to what? It will lead to inflation. Right? So therefore it says that if we ignore fiscal deficit, this will lead to inflation. Second reason why ignoring is not good is because it increases the overall interest rate in the economy. So how it will lead to increase in interest? Because if the government wants to increase expenditure, how will it do? I mean, government does not have surplus money, does not have unlimited money. Government will borrow from the market. And when government will borrow from the market, then there will be less fund which will be available for the private sector. Because earlier, if there are limited funds, there were only the private sector which were borrowing. Right? But now, the government sector is also borrowing. So now there is competition between private sector and the government sector for borrowing funds from the market. But the funds are limited. And when there is competition, as you know, it leads to what? It leads to increase in price. When there is excess demand, now there is excess demand for limited funds. And when there is excess demand, it leads to increase in price. Same will happen in the case of interest rate. Now that person who is the owner of these limited funds, it knows that now there are so many people who wants to borrow. So now I want more interest rate I will give you funds. Right? So it increases the interest rate in the economy, and because of interest rate, it crowds out the private investment. because private investment, as you know, is dependent on interest rate. If the interest rate will be high, it will discourage investment. So therefore, interest rate or the increase in overall interest rate, which this will lead to, fiscal deficit will lead to, it will crowd out the private investment in the economy. Thirdly, it leads to future interest payment burden. So government will borrow for now, for the present generation, but if interest will have to be paid by the future generation who perhaps will not use those resources. So it violates the principles of intergenerational equity. And fourthly, it can lead to a debt trap, like what has happened with Greece, with Portugal, with Spain, etc. So what is the way forward? So way forward is that for a country like India, the golden rule is that we need to focus on both the twin deficits, which is both the CAD and the fiscal deficit. We should ensure that both the internal and external balance are well maintained. We need to ensure that both these deficits are kept under control. Therefore, this is not the right time to shift away from the fiscal deficit debate. Let's move to the next issue, is why India needs a sports regulator. So sports, as you know that India has done really well in Asian Games this year. We did really good in CWG Games, and the good part is that the medals which India has been winning, they are not winning just from 2-3 sports. The portfolio from where we are winning is now very diversified. We won in wushu sport, we won in bridge, we won in number of other sports, athletics, some events where we never won any medals, we won this year. So therefore it has been discussed in this op-ed that now that we are doing really good, now that we were considered that we are in our genes, we are not a sporting nation, but that thing is now changing, and that thing is changing with the limited resources that our sportsmen have been provided with the limited training that they have been provided with the limited infrastructure they have been provided with the limited money that they have been provided with. So therefore, the op-ed says that if we could provide a proper sports regulator, then probably things could improve a lot in the long run. So it says that till now the sports infrastructure, or the sports what you call as governance in India, is run by sporting federations, and the sporting federation in India faces number of problems. First of all these politicians have become the head of the sporting federations, and they are using the limited resources for enriching themselves and they have no idea about sport. They have no vision for that sports. They don't have any technical expertise for that sports. They are governing these sports federation just like any bureaucratic PSUs. That is the problem. Secondly, these federations, they are non-accountable. They are they are not frequent elections which take place. Also, there has been instances of selection biases where the favorite of that politician gets selected and the non-favorite do not get selected even though he has much more potential. Thirdly, these head of these federations, they have have started, or they have allowed the private enterprises deep into their dens, with franchises owning teams and buying players, and broadcasters and sponsors becoming prominent stakeholders. So in recent years, private sector has entered into these sports. So we have this pro kabaddi league, we have this hockey league, we have this football league, and these private sector enterprises, they have no love for the sports. They're only there for earning money, right? So things now have changed, right? And also in India, sports are in state list. Sports in India, they are part of state list. And the reason was that when constitution was being made, nobody gave importance to sports. In a country which had 8% literacy, which had 75 to 80% poverty, sports was the least thing where the government focused on. Government was focusing on other things. So sports was kept with entertainment and amusement in category, and they were given to the states. So therefore the center cannot do anything for enriching the sports. So in order to create a national-wide sports regulator like SEBI, the first thing which we need to do is we need to bring sports under the concurrent list. So if it will be under the concurrent list, then central government will have the power to create a nationwide regulator of sports, just like SEBI. And in most of the countries, this thing is there. In most of the countries, they have a nationwide sports regulator. The job of this sports regulator would be to oversee that these federations, they become more democratic. There are frequent elections that take place. They don't bias with any. They don't have any biases with any player. They ensure that the funds that they have been given, it has been utilized properly. It will also keep a check on private sector and its practices. It will also keep a check on state federations, that state federations should also be kept accountable. So all these things would, and it would also act as a tribunal where all these sportsmen who have any grudges against the federation, they can register their complaints. So all these things this sports regulator would do. So the OPIT says if we want to become the sports champion in the world, we should create this sports regulator. Let's move to the next OPIT, which says power play on the troubles of the power sector. So it says this talks about the power sector in India. So recently what has happened, that RBI has given a diktat that banks should take cognizance of the stress loan if repayment were missed even by a day. So if repayment is missed even by a day, the banks have been given power by the RBI to start the insolvency and bankruptcy court proceedings. So this has given a turmoil in the power sector, because out of the 70 firms in India which have the loan of 3.8 lakh crore and who are expected to face insolvency proceedings, around 34 of these firms belong to the power sector, and they constitute 54% of banks' exposure in this case. So the sector which will be most adversely affected from the diktat of the RBI will be the power sector. Therefore, the power sector had pleaded in the High Court that they should be given exemption, or this RBI diktat is unconstitutional and therefore it should be annulled. But High Court has refused to do that. High Court has said the order of RBI is valid and it will be implemented in all the sectors. So let us first discuss what are the reasons for this NPA problem among the power sectors. There are 3-4 main reasons. First reason is there are fuel shortages, and these fuel shortages are because of lack of supply linkages and also because of cancellation of coal block allocation, which Supreme Court did few years back. So because of lack of fuel supply, these power producers, they cannot generate electricity. Second reason is absence of power purchase agreements by state discoms. So state discoms, as you know, are not in good health. They are in bad health. They are also in loan. They don't have money to buy power. They don't have money to buy the power that are being generated by these power producers. Therefore, many of these power producers, even after generating the power, they are not being able to sell that power because of the lack of PPA agreements with the state discoms, and because state discoms do not have the capacity, or what you say as auqat, to buy the power that is being generated. And thirdly, there is cost overruns due to delayed clearance. So you require environmental, land acquisition and other clearances before you start the project, and because of the delay, these power producers are facing loss. So why is resolution of NPA from power sector difficult? This is difficult because unless and until states discoms financial balance sheet would not improve, they would not buy the power. And since they will not buy the power, even after producing power, that power will, these power producers will not get any revenue for that, right? So why the High Court decision is a good decision? This is a good decision because it has given the mandate. Because if government would have stuck down that thing, this would have affected other sectors also. The other sector would have then filed the same petition that RBI should not do that, or RBI should not be given that power. Then the whole NPA resolution process would stuck, and it also would make the insolvency and bankruptcy code toothless, because RBI would give some decision and all these producers then will go to court. From court they will get the stay order, and since it will get the stay order, the insolvency and the bankruptcy proceedings will not take place. So that, to ensure that it gives a message that High Court is not the place where you can get the stay hours. If the RBI says something, you have to implement that. So this is the decision in that good regard. So what has been the government doing in this regard? So to solve the problem of debts of this power producers, government has recently came out with the scheme known as Parivartan scheme. I think I have discussed this scheme in the lecture, so I won't be discussing again. If you want to check, you can. I think in the second or third lecture I've discussed in detail about the Parivartan scheme. You can check that lecture. Now, what is the way forward? How could we talk in long run? How could we think of resolving this debt problem of these power producers and the state discoms. So many experts have said that there should be a single market for power. And a single market would ensure it will boost competition and it will encourage the state discoms to be more efficient. Because when you will have competition, then you will have to force. BSNL has become efficient. Why? Because BSNL is now facing competition from Airtel, from Vodafone, from Jio. That because state discoms are monopoly, they don't face competition. That is why they are so inefficient. So we need a single market for power. The center should also bring state electricity regulators together to build capacity and opportunities for mutual learning. Also, the center can incentivize competitive reforms by highlighting and rewarding the best practices. Also, like GST Council, we can have the Council of Electricity or state discoms for promoting competitive federalism. Let's move to the next topic, which is crackdown on civil society. So recently, as you must have read, that number of human rights activists and left-wing activists like Sudha Bharadwaj, Gonzalez, Father, they have been arrested, and it has given a lot of criticism. The government has faced a lot of criticism for that. It wants to silence the people who defend human rights. It wants to end the civil society movement in India. So that is why I am discussing this topic, that why civil society is important in a democracy, what role it plays, what are the other side of the argument that which the government gives, that civil society, there are some people who are actually against the state, and what should be done. So all these things we will discuss in this topic. So what do we mean by civil society? So the most easy definition of civil society is that it is a group of people who are working for the welfare of the people and who are working on non-profit basis. So profit is not an intention here, and also who are not the part of the state. So two things you have to remember, these two are the keywords, that it should work on a non-profit basis, and secondly, it should not be part of the state. So if state comprises of government, of business, and of civil society. So it is not part of government, it is not part of business. Now, what is the need for civil society organizations in a democracy? Well, the first need is that, see, in a democracy, generally the politicians or what you call as the government after winning elections, it becomes more arrogant. It loses the touch of the people. Plus, we don't have a system of direct democracy in India. We have a system of indirect democracy in India, where we elect the representatives and then they govern on their behalf. But those elected representatives, they lose touch with the people because they are very far away from the people. So civil society act as a bridge between the government and the citizen. They act as a bridge. They inform the government about the problems being faced by the people, and it implements the government schemes on the ground, on the grassroots level. It helps the enforcement agencies to implement the scheme on the ground level. It also tells the intention of the government. It also communicates the policies of the government to the people at the grassroots level, because people are generally not aware of the government policies. So it has two jobs: bringing the problems of the people to the attention of the government, and bringing or enlightening the people with the schemes and the policies being launched by the government. This is a very important force. This is the important role which it plays. Also, the civil society organization have the capacity to challenge the brute power of the state through petitions, through protests, through dharnas, and through judicial activism. So if the state becomes dictator, people alone cannot challenge the state because state is so powerful. It is the CSO which challenges the brute power of the state, which tries to ensure that democracy or the democracy stays on in that country. Third thing is that these groups, these human rights group, they protect and they promote the human rights of the citizens. Fourthly, they play an important role in implementing the government policy on ground. So it has a role in governance also. All these schemes, Swachh Bharat and all, these implement would completely, these schemes would be a big failure if CSO would not be involved. It is the CSO which is technically monitoring the implementation of the scheme. It is the CSO which is making the officials accountable. It is the CSO which is making people aware about the need for Swachh Bharat. So it also plays an important role in the governance process. And also, they form a backbone of the democracy. They ensure that democracy becomes not just representative but actual democracy. So how did the civil society organization rose in India? So civil society organization came much into prominence after the emergency. So after the emergency, number of when the human rights were violated, when the state became dictator, so civil society movement emerged out of it. And then number of it went to different directions. Some were human rights organization, some tried to defend the rights of the marginalized sections, some were doing the environmental activism, some were doing the peace process and all things. So they went into different directions. When we talk of the role played by civil society in India, let's talk of the role played by civil society in India. So they played a numerous role. They have improved transparency. How? Through the which it is a CSO which was responsible for the enactment of RTI Act in India. That CSO was the MKSS, or Mazdoor Kisan Sangathan, something like that. So this MKSS launched the movement. It mobilized the people. It forced the government to enact the RTI Act. And the RTI Act is the single most act which empowers the people, which brings transparency into the system. Also, we can take the name of India Against Corruption. IAC also was a civil society movement. It also brought Lokpal bill. Also, many of the civil society organizations, they played an important role in protecting and promoting human rights. Example of this could be PUCL, People's Union for Civil Liberties. They have also played an important role in investigating cases of arbitrary imprisonment, custodial death, encounters, and coercion of any citizen who dare to speak against the state or the dominant groups. They have also protected the rights of the vulnerable sections of the society. Like Adivasis, Muslims, Dalits. They have also given voice to the most underrepresented, and the biggest example of this could be the NAS Association, the effort of which because of whose effort the Supreme Court was forced to declare that Section 377 is invalid. They also promoted education and skill development. We have organizations like Pratham, Prayas, all of them are playing we have like Teach for India, all of them are playing an important role in improving education skill development in India. Now we come to the second part, which is, are all civil society good? Well, that is not the case. There are some black sheeps within the CSO. Some of them are in the sole business of getting funds. They get funds and then they do nothing. Also, CBI has said that many of these CSO have been funded by the international organizations, or they are being funded by a lobby group, by an industrial group, in order to prevent the project of the other industrialists. So they have been a proxy candidates. Suppose Reliance and Tata are in rivalry or a project, and Tata gets the project. Now Reliance funds a CSO, and then CSO raises some voices against that project, that this project would destroy the lands of tribals, it would destroy the rights of tribals, this will destroy the environment, and therefore it goes to court and prevents that project from taking into shape. Now these are playing a vested interest. These CSO are not working for the welfare of those tribals, they are working on the behalf of that industrialist. But that is also a problem. Third is that CBI has said that many of these CSO do not file regular returns, and the source of their funding are not disclosed. Also, the IB has alleged that there have been number of CSOs like Greenpeace, which are instigating villages in their vicinity. They are instigating the villagers to rise up and protest any developmental projects like POSCO, like Kudankalam. So they are causing damage to the economy of the country. The IB estimated 2 to 3% of the damage to the economy is caused by the CSOs. And yes, we should not accept that some of these CSOs have some nexus with the Naxalites, the Maoists, and the other anti-national groups. So that is also a fact. So what is a way forward? If a question comes in exam, would you justify the government action or would you outrightly criticize it? No, you would not do the both. You would present the both sides of the argument, and then in the way forward you should explain what should be the middle ground. So you should say that yes, there have been number of civil societies that have been playing some dubious role as highlighted by the IB reports, but civil society organizations also play a very important role in a development process of any country. It also plays a very important role in ensuring that a country remains democratic. I mean, if there would have been no civil society, would you expect that the revolution in the Eastern European countries which came in 89, it would have come? All these, this solidarity group and all these things, they were all part of CSOs. It is because of the CSOs there was this peaceful transfer of power in Eastern revolution. Actually, there was this saying, there's one person who said that why did revolution arose in a semi-feudal country like Russia in 1917, why didn't it occur in more progressive Western capitalist countries? And the reason he gave was that because in Russia the state was absolutist, the state was complete autocratic, the czars, there was no scope for CSOs and all. That is the reason in those kinds of societies democratic change cannot take place. That society, the change only take place to violent armed struggle. Only in countries where you have civil society organizations, because civil society organizations play a very important role in informing the government about the anger of the people, and it also gives an avenue to the people to showcase its anger. That is why it prevents revolution, it prevents violent revolution. So what should be the way forward? The way forward should be that the center should, first of all, there should be a regulatory mechanism to keep a watch on the financial activities of the NGO and the civil society organization. Because the problem is not CSO. Problem is few black sheeps which have entered the CSO business. In the name of CSO business, they are doing all the dubious activities. So if there will be a regulatory organization for CSO and NGO, and that regulatory organization should be completely independent and autonomous from the government, it should play a role of seeing which NGO, which civil society is playing a good role and which is not playing a bad role. This regulatory organization should also have the power of accreditation. So like the institutes, the NGO, the civil society organization should be accredited that there is A+, they are disclosing all the funds, they are completely transparent, they are doing a great job, A+. That will also help the government to give funding, because government also gives funding for implementing the projects. It will help the government to give funds to the A+ and A rated NGOs and not to give funds to these B and C and D rated NGOs. It will also help in preventing or in segregating the best performing CSOs from the black sheeps. Also, right now the CSOs, they come both under Home Ministry and the Ministry of, because for the FCRA is managed by the Home Ministry. They come under both the Home Ministry and the Finance Ministry. The government should ensure that it comes under one ministry. So this ends the ninth issue of the week, which is crackdown on civil society. Let's move to the next topic, which is India and the US. It's complicated. It's again an op-ed. So this op-ed was in the kind of context of this op-ed is that this week the US Defense Secretary and the Foreign Secretary will come to Delhi. It has actually came on 6th of September, and they are having 2+2 dialogue with the Indian counterpart. So this 2+2 thing started in 2008, where the Defense Minister and the Foreign Minister of India talks with the Defense Minister and Foreign Minister of USA. So let's talk of, so this op-ed talks of the strategic convergence that is taking place between India and US. What are the reasons behind that? How much we have progressed in that line, and what are the issues that still need to be rectified? So that is why the name of the op-ed, India and the US. It's complicated. So first of all, let us discuss why there was strategic convergence in last 2 decades. There are 4 main reasons. First reason is that there was end of Cold War. Before that, India was more or less, they had good relations with Soviet Union, but after Cold War, US thought that, and India also the reformed its economy, so India became much closer to what you call as market economy, just like US. So this also motivated both countries to start strategic relationship with each other. Second reason was that with the opening of India's economy, the American private sector began to look at India with great interest. So with liberation of the economy, America thought that India could be a big market. India could be a big market for its defense export. Because one more reason was that now India could not depend, earlier it used to be dependent on Soviet Union for its defense needs, but now Soviet Union was no more there, and Russia had become weak in the 90s. So India was looking into other countries which can fulfill its defense need. That is why India also India also established diplomatic relations with Israel. Right, and we thought that US can also provide us with the arms. And the third reason was that India's diaspora. So India's 3 million diaspora in US, they became politically strong in the 90s, and they were pushing the government. They had created strong lobbies in the government. They were pushing the government to increase its strategic relationship with India. So let's look into the timeline of defense dialogues and cooperation between India and US in last 2 decades. So in 1995, defense dialogue began between India and US, and there was a defense policy group at the level of the Defense Secretary, and 3 steering groups to develop exchange between the 3 services started. So with this group, the interaction between the Indian Defense Secretary and the US Defense Secretary and the heads of three services, Army, Navy and Navy, and the cooperation and the exchange between these people started in 1995. In 2008, this 2+2 dialogue was established. And before that, in 2006, Indo-US nuclear deal was signed, in which the US accepted India as a nuclear power. In 2008, 2+2 dialogue was started, and India-US Defense Framework Agreement was signed. Right now, US is the country which India has largest number of the military exercises. Also, in 2016, India was designated as a major defense partner country. Also, in 2018, this year, I think Rakesh would have spoken that in his lecture, there was inclusion of India in the Strategic Trade Authorization 1 category. And this is a status which is only given to the allies country, which are the NATO members. But there are certain challenges in the strategic relations, and these challenges will occur in the next few years. Let us discuss in this challenge on the challenges front. First is that US Congress has enacted America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, or what you call as CAATSA. And this CAATSA, this says that US government would impose a sanction against those countries which will engage in significant transactions with Russian military and intelligence agencies. As you know that with Russia, US is having a very, very bad relations. It has imposed some sanctions. India, as you know, has been one of the largest defense partner is Russia. The reason why Russia is our defense partner, because Russia supplies us the equipments at a cheaper price with transfer of technology mechanism. Therefore, Russia is an attractive market for us, or Russia is an attractive kind of partner for us. And recently we have proposed that S-400 missile defense system would be imported from Russia, but this S-400 missile defense system on this CAATSA would be imposed, and that India is not happy about, because India is saying that okay, you have problem with Russia, let it be your problem. We have strong relations with Russia. It is our strong defense partner. Therefore, we have to deal with them. So India is not happy with this act because it hurts its strategic interests. Also, the second concern is with respect to the sanctions which US imposed on Iran. So as you know that recently US has said US is withdrawn from the nuclear deal which Obama signed, Iranian crude imports have And India, as you know, Iran is very important for India because we get large number of oil from them. Chabahar project is our dream project through which we are thinking of entering Central Asia and Afghanistan, bypassing Pakistan. We are also dealing in fertilizers with Iran, and if this US wants that no country should deal with Iran, but it would hurt the geostrategic interests of India. So India is also not very happy about that. So therefore the way forward is that we need to have creative thinking. We need to understand the concerns of each others in these 2+2 talks. We should ensure that nothing is forced on each other. If India has bad relations with any other country and US has good relations, India should not be concerned about that. Same should be done by the US. So this ends the 10th issue of the week, which is India and its US. It's complicated. Let's move to the 11th topic, which is Uniform Civil Code. So why this was in news? Because the recently Law Commission of India has said that UCC, or Uniform Civil Code, is neither necessary nor desirable at this stage. And UCC, as you know, is one of the most polarizing topic of this country, along with Ram Mandir and Article 370 and cow, of course. Not that is the most polarizing topic that we have right now. So what is UCC? First of all, look into this. Uniform Civil Code means that in each community, the personal laws based on scriptures and customs would be replaced with a common set of laws governing every citizen. So marriage, divorce, everything, it should be done by a common law, not by a personal laws. Right now, most of the religions in India, their personal matters like marriage, divorce, succession, they are governed with the personal laws and not by the common civil law. So, is there a provision in India regarding that? Yes, we have Article 44, which says that, which is a directive principle. It says that the state shall endeavor to secure for its citizen a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. But it was not introduced because some sections of India, especially the Muslims, they are not ready for that. And since India had partition in 47, so the government was, really, they didn't want to take any step to alienate them further. Therefore, they did not do anything on the UCC. But why do we need UCC? Well, we need Uniform Civil Code for a number of reasons. First is to provide equal citizens, or to provide equal status to citizens. Well, if a country wants to be secular, no secular country, France does not have any personal law. They do not allow any personal law. Most of UK does not allow any personal law. If a country needs to be secular, this personal laws thing does not have any place in a secular country. Either you make it a Hindu country or Islamic country, or if you want to be a secular country, the personal laws have no place. Also, to promote gender parity. So it is a fact. There is no denying of the fact that all religions, in all the religions of the world, the women are treated as a second-grade citizens, irrespective of any religion which you say. And it's an irony that it is the women who are the most religious people. Even though that religion gives them a second-grade status, still they are the people who keep these fasts, who kind of worships, goes to temple or mosque every day. They are the people who are most religious. So this is an irony. This is probably because of patriarchal notions. So UCC promotes gender inequality. The personal laws discriminate against women. You can marry, a man can marry 4 times, a woman can marry only once. In Hindu personal laws, the women are given less rights on succession than men. So all these things are discriminatory. Therefore, we need a personal right. We need to have a uniform civil code which gives equal right to men and women in civil matters, in personal matters. Also, to support national integration. It has been commented that some people are, some specific community are not being able to come to mainstream because they still follow their personal laws and they still don't consider themselves as Indian first, they consider themselves as XYZ first. Also, because of the personal law, it has become a political issue now. Some people, some political parties, some ideologies say that because you are allowing somebody from personal following personal laws, you are doing the policy of appeasement, which leads to a reaction from the other sides, and it destroys the national, or what you call as communal harmony in India. Therefore, we need, if there will be personal laws, if there will be uniform civil code, then this debate will end. And finally, it will integrate the people. There would be nobody who would allege that some people or some community are getting special treatment. This is appeasement. Therefore, we want a stronger government which takes care of our interests. These all things will get over. And also to to accommodate the aspirations of young people. So what is the Law Commission observation on UCC? Law Commission said that secularism cannot contradict the plurality prevalent in our country. Secularism does not mean imposing the view of majoritarianism, the majority community on the minority community. The secularism in India is different from the secularism of the West. Secularism of India says that all the religion should be protected, all the religious practice should be promoted. No specific religion or religious activity should be given preference over any other religious activity. It does not propagate atheism, it does not propagate complete separation of state and religion. Therefore, the Western case cannot be compared with the Indian case. The Indian tradition of secularism promotes multiculturalism, and the concept of multiculturalism says that we should give liberty to the religions to follow their own law in personal matters. But it also said that discriminatory practices within the religion should not hide behind the cloak of the faith to gain legitimacy. So it says that discriminatory practice within religion, these needs to be eradicated. They should not take the cover of faith, that since it is mandatory in our faith, we will do that. This needs to be ended. So therefore, Law Commission gives a middle way. It presents a middle path on this issue, and it has given number of key suggestions to solve this debate. First suggestion I give is to codify all the personal laws. So the problem is that in all religions there are a number of school of thoughts. Hinduism, you have Vaishnavite, you have Shaivite, you have Charvaka, you have so many. Islam, you have Shia, Sunni, then within Sunni, you have Hanafi, you have Barelvi, you have Deobandi, you have Sufism. All these things are there. You have Salafism, and everybody have their different personal laws. For example, triple talaq is not an issue for the Shias. The Shias don't do that practice. It is done in some sections of Sunnis, right? The what you call as female the genital mutilation or circumcision is only done in the Bohra community of Muslims or Shia Muslims. All other Muslims don't do that. So there is so much what you call as variety in these personal laws. So therefore what we require is that we require to codify these personal laws. Let all the Maulvis or all the Pandits of all the different school of thought sit together and bring out a uniform personal law. And for Islam this is the personal law, for Hinduism this is the personal law. Also, it said that the matters of marriage and divorce should be settled extrajudicially, and it suggested that certain measures in marriage and divorce which should be uniformly accepted in the personal laws of all religions. Second thing is suggested is to fix the marriageable age. So it says 18 years for both men and women, because that will make them equals. That will also make adultery as a ground for divorce for men and women, and that would also simplify the divorce procedure. And thirdly, it says that polygamy should be made a criminal offense. It suggested that the Nikah Namas should make it clear that polygamy is a criminal offense, and this should apply to all the communities. Let's move to the last main issue of this week. The rest of the issues Rakesh will take. A big data for farmers. So this was the op-ed which came in Indian Express, or probably Hindu, I think. It said that it talks about how can big data be used for improving the fertility of the soil. So it starts with the op-ed starts with mentioning the example of multi-purpose national ID card, which was introduced in early 2000, and it was it was there in the border areas. And this card was given to the Indian citizens to verify that they are the citizens of our India. The purpose was to secure the borders. Then the Aadhaar was introduced in the country, and government is using Aadhaar for targeting government subsidies to driving startup models, etc. It says that we should think of a similar kind of model for the soil health card scheme. So soil health card scheme, as you know, was introduced in 2015, and this scheme intended that every farmer would be given a soil health card. So his soil would be taken to the lab will test the soil, and then the lab will give the report that this soil is deficient in these fertilizers, these minerals, therefore these fertilizers should be applied on the soil. The idea of the scheme is to ensure that the fertility of the soil improves, that the land gives the maximum returns, and to also prevent the overuse of any minerals, and also to reduce the cost of fertilizer for the farmer. This was the intended objective of this soil health card scheme. But there have been number of problems that the scheme is being faced with. The first problem it is being faced, and there is operational challenge. Which means that it requires a lot of soil samples, because every farmer's field soil is taken away, then went to lab. The process of taking soil from field to lab, then you don't have so many numbers of labs in India, you don't have so many numbers of scientists in India to test that soil. That is creating a problem, and that is also put a tremendous strain on the labs, and that is leading to labs not giving proper results. There was this Harvard study which said that around there have been some accuracy issues in 300 of the 800 plots which were tested. So in 300 plots, the lab did not give a proper adequate report, because they don't have time, they don't have resources to properly check the soil quality of each and every plot. Next is the scheme's current design oversimplifies the nutrient recommendation. So this is being done because the scheme says, it says that if supposed in the soil zinc is less, the soil health card would recommend that if you apply zinc, the soil fertility would improve and you will get maximum returns. But this is not the case, because the yield of the soil is not dependent on only one kind of mineral. It is much more complex than that. So it is determined not by the deficiency of that nutrient, but of other variables also, like rainfall, production practice, the presence of other nutrients, soil acidity and temperature. Since the soil health card only tells that this soil is nutrient in XYZ or zinc or iron, and you should apply more zinc into the soil and then your problem will be solved, this is not a good solution for that, because the problem of the farmer increases further in some cases. He kind of uses more of zinc, but the soil yield does not increases, because the soil yield is dependent not just on that mineral but on combination of other factors also. Also, the scheme underestimates its own potential. So it's, the vast repository of data which is collected from millions of samples, they remain largely isolated from researchers, startups and even state government. The data which is collected, which is there in the lab, the data is there in the lab. It is not shared with any of the other personals. No other personal can make use of the data and improve the performance of the farmers. So it's kind of, the scheme underachieves its potential. So what is the solution for that? The solution, this OPET says, is the soil information system. So the soil information system, using that we can move to the sampling based soil information system that reduces the needs for tens of the millions of samples and that can produce better result 4 times faster and at a half of kind of cost. So what we can do is that we can develop predictive models using the big data to provide the recommendations to the farmers that account for all the factors that affects the crop yield response. So big data can be used, and using big data we can tell the farmer, see, these are the factors your soil is dependent on. Therefore you should make sure that you make use of that information and apply that in the field. The government can then make these data sets open through the API platforms. And then this data could be shared with the startups, and these startups can combine the soil health card data with rainfall and irrigation data and deliver the precision agriculture advisories to the farmers through the use of mobile phone. So startup can then take the big data from this government, and then the startups can give advice to the farmers that, see, this is the deficiency in your soil, this is the amount of rainfall which is predicted this year, this is the water availability you have, this is the soil acidity, this is the condition of soil acidity, and using that you have to apply this much mineral, this much fertilizer, this much water, etc. So this can have a maximum impact on the productivity of the farmers. It could increase the soil yield of the, it could increase the yield of the soil. And there have been number of countries which have been doing this. So in Tanzania, they are using the same kind of platform. So the African Soil Information System uses machine learning to bring together various pieces of data, soil, climate and production practices, to enable the government and the fertilizers companies determine what blended fertilizers can improve the soil nutrition. So they have been using that. So this is the solution which this OPED is giving about solving the deficiencies of the soil healthcare system. Let's now, this ends the mains topics. Now let's go to the prelims topics. First issue is that anti-lynching or measures, there is a social media sites to be held responsible. This is also can be a main topic. So Home Ministry, there was a panel carried by the Home Ministry, and that panel has came to a conclusion that social media platforms will be held responsible if there is any lynching which has taken place because of the misinformation spread through those platforms. So as you know that on Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, Twitter, number of rumors have been spread, and using that rumors, we have seen that around 15 to 20 people have been lynched in last 1 year. So the government has talking strict now, and government has came out with and this panel recommended that social media platforms should be held responsible for any lynching. So then social media platforms, it will incentivize them to be proactive to ensure that any rumor which is being spread, they should be brought out as early as possible, or they should be removed as early as possible. Next is Ayushman Bharat and the concept of insurance. So this was in news because most of the states have said that they will implement Ayushman Bharat not through the insurance model but through the trust model. So we should let us explain the difference between the insurance model and the trust model. So there is insurance model which we all are familiar with, in which we pay the premium to the insurance company. The insurance companies then provide us the insurance cover, and if something happens to us, the insurance company will pay to us. In the case of Ayushman Bharat, if we will use insurance model, then the state or the government will pay premium on our behalf. And if anything will happen to us, the insurance company will provide insurance cover to us. In the trust-based model, the central and the state government will create a trust, and the state government and the central government will contribute in that trust, and that trust will be for no profit, no loss. This will be kind of a what you call as an NGO kind of thing. And then if somebody happens to us, the trust will pay the money. The insurance company will be out of the scene. It will be a trust that will pay the money to us. So many of the state government are saying that they will use the trust model because the trust model have actually worked in many states. There is Arogishri scheme in Andhra Pradesh. There is this scheme in Karnataka. All of them work on a trust model, and they have worked really well. both these trust and the insurance models, they depend on two basic principles, and these principles are the law of large numbers and the pooling of risk. Law of large numbers says that since the number are large, a lot of people are there, not all the people will get sick at the same time. So therefore, since some people will get sick, we will pay the money from the premiums we get from all of the people. Since suppose there are 100 people who pay the premium and there are 10 people who get sick, so the amount of 100, the total amount which you get from the 100 premiums will be able to bear the cost of the treatment of those 10 sick people. That is the law of large number. Second is the pooling, the pooling of risk. That suppose there is a locality and there are 100 houses. Not all houses will get the thieves will stole. The thieves will only stole one house. So rest of the 99 houses will be able to bear the loss because the risk is diversified. It's pooled, right? So these insurance and the trust based model, they play on these two. They play in these two models. Now, after Saubhagya, government plans induction stove for the poor. So the government is working on providing induction stoves to the poor households in rural India, in urban areas, and these induction would run through electricity. So government is planning that after Ayushman scheme, after the Saubhagya scheme will be implemented on ground, after all the houses will have electricity, the next step would be to ensure that these houses will be given induction stoves, and that using that electricity they will kind of cook the food. That will help India in two ways. First of all, it will reduce the carbon dioxide emissions, because the chulas used for cooking, they pollute a lot of things. It will reduce the kind of carbon dioxide, which will help India to fulfill its Paris climate deal commitment. Second benefit of this would be that it would improve the health of women. And third would be it would create the demand for electricity. See, the problem is that even when you electrify the villages, they don't use electricity, and because they don't use electricity, the power producing companies, they are not very kind of they don't feel like providing electricity, because they feel even if we provide electricity, nobody will use and we will bear the loss, because it costs you to establish the all these poles and everything. But if nobody uses them, then that will create a loss for the power producers. But with this step, it will create a demand for electricity, because every house will use the induction stove, and that will create the demand for electricity, and that will make it profitable for the power producers to enter even the smallest villages in India. And that will help in reducing the NPA problem for these power producers. Let's move to the next issue, which is new ranking based on innovation. So the name of the ranking is ARIA. Full form of this is Atal Ranking of Institution on Innovation Achievements. That will be launched on 15 October, which is the birth anniversary of APJ Abdul Kalam. So when we already have this national framework ranking, why do we need another ranking? The reason is that this ranking will focus completely on innovation. So it will rank the institutes based on the innovation they do. Because as you know that we are really bad in innovation, which we have discussed in the earlier lectures also. So idea of the scheme is to provide or to promote innovation in the institutes. It will incentivize the institutes to innovate more, because if they will innovate more, the government, they would be ranked higher in the innovation index. So it will focus on 5 things: budget, expenses and revenue generated, facilitating access to advanced center, ideas of entrepreneurship, innovation ecosystems supported through teaching and learning, innovative solution to improve governance of the institution. Next is the Supreme Court has ruled out that quota is state specific. So quota would, so if somebody has a scheduled caste, somebody comes into the category of scheduled caste and he's from UP, if he shifts in MP and he does not become a domicile of MP, he will not be able to get the quota in the MP civil service examination. That is what the Supreme Court has said. Next is that there is heavy discharge of waters from China, which is threatening the Arunachal Pradesh. So if we draw the map, this is the course of the Siang River. So problem is that you know the Sangpo River, which originates in Tibet, when it enters India, when it enters Arunachal Pradesh, it is called as Siang River. Then Siang River, along with Lohit and 1 or 2 rivers, joins together to form the Brahmaputra River, which enters into Assam. So India is concerned because China has been there's been heavy discharge of waters from China, and that is making the level of Siang River to a dangerous level. So this could create a problem of floods in Arunachal Pradesh, and many people are saying that there has been increase in the discharge of water because of dams which China is making in Brahmaputra River or in the Sangpo River. Others are saying that it is because of earthquakes, but it has alarmed the Indian agencies, it has alarmed the Central Water Commission of India. Next is Kathmandu Declaration. So Kathmandu Declaration was recently, it was done, it was part of the BIMSTEC summit. I did not look into the main issue because it's hardly anything. Again, the thing which I witnessed in the BIMSTEC lecture, that again, loud talks without any concrete action. This says that the declaration deplored terror attacks in all parts of the world, including the BIMSTEC countries, and stressed that there could be no justification of terrorism on any way. It also said that all nations to devise a comprehensive approach which includes preventing financing of terrorists and terrorist actions in the territories under their control. The declaration also said that the countries which are exporting terrorism, they should be held accountable, which is an indirect way or of indirect kind of signal given to Pakistan. The other thing which it said was that it underlined the importance of multi-dimensional connectivity as a key enabler to economic integration for prosperity. Again, no concrete steps, just Photoshop and just broad and vague announcements. So this ends the weekly issues of the week, and we will come next week. Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civil State.